So I just wanted to go through a couple little notes because after working in the art store and teaching artists all over, I hear a lot of the same comments of how do I be a better painter? How do I be a better artist? How do I develop my own style and all that kind of fun stuff. So I kind of made a quick document that sort of answered my questions, and it also relates to how I design the image that we're going to be painting. So I'll just share my screen, and I have this really cool reference for you also called PureRef. So I will be able to send you guys this document that I created, and it's a really cool free sort of software that is used a lot in the game industry for just creating mood boards and things to share within the office. And the cool thing is you can just right click on an image and paste it like in here, and it keeps the resolution, and then you can sort of scale it up and down and zoom in really close and out. So it's a really cool document. I will give this to you with the link of where to download it in an email. But I wanted to discuss a little bit because I know there's a lot of discussion about using black paint and how, especially if you're a realist, you should avoid black paint. But I would say if you're wanting to stylize things, black paint is your best friend. And I used it in the style that we're doing to solidify the tree shape. So I just pulled a few references from online about how that sort of works. So the minute you outline anything, you get almost like an illustrative storybook feel to it. And, you know, I've pulled a lot of different sort of art directions off the internet, but you can sort of see the similar theme of how the outlining helps to define those shapes. So we'll be using black for those to create that sort of comic book feeling. And it also just makes it easy to draw. And the other thing, I know a lot of people work from photo ref, which is something I've always done also. And we kind of get lost in the detail. And there's always, as artists, it's difficult to sort of simplify everything. And that's one of the major challenges, especially if you're doing on plein air. But I've sort of discovered over the years that if you can focus mostly on the silhouettes of things and the major shapes of things and forget all the other information, it really helps to narrow it down and also build your own style, because the way that you define your shapes goes a long way into defining your personal style. So because we're painting all these fun windswept trees, I went and just pulled a bunch of examples from concept art and all kinds of other things. So there's like a variety of different styles in here with different levels of details, and I'll send this to you guys so you have it. But when I'm looking at a landscape and I'm looking at imagery and trees and whatever, I try to imagine it in a black and white, very harsh contrast, just so I can get a feel of sort of what the overall shape language is, and then you can play with that so you can exaggerate things to make that a little bit more obvious. And this is a good example here where it's already nighttime, so it kind of helps you already if you just look at certain types of imagery. And then in the daytime, it's the same thing, and you just imagine it in the black and white cutout, and you kind of get the overall shapes. So I used this a lot when I was designing those islands. Same with water. Like, water is a hard one to sort of understand how it works. So it's the same sort of thing where I've gone through and I've just looked at the major shapes. So this is like a big, messy body of water, but we've got these ridges here. And then we've got this kind of shape that flows up through there. And then we've got this leading line. It's always fun to play with your leading lines also, and you can really exaggerate these. So this wave actually points directly to the kayaker, which is kind of clever. So if you wanted to really stylize this, you could sort of bring it over and really sweep that around so it really points and into the mountain. Anyway, so you can do a lot of fun stuff, and then take the clouds, instead of having it point out this way, you just kind of swirl it back down to bring it in. So that's sort of how when I look at these, what can I play with to sort of help my composition? And just looking at the shapes, like this one here, it's like a big flat shape that just kind of comes up in here, and then this is like a big sort of flat triangle. So if you keep those simplified, you can get the image to read quickly and easily. Again, we've got like a leading line in here with the foam, and then we've just got some major sort of shape areas that you can play with. And then, so when I come to the image that we're gonna do, that's sort of what I played with, and I simplified it quite a bit, but we've got like the major tree shapes with not too much detail, and then we've got those lines and those mass volumes in here. And then everything kind of swirls together. And again, there's the silhouette and the grayscale. So that's another thing that I kind of see, why I saw lacking a lot in my work, and I've been pushing it, and I see lacking in a lot of work that I see online, is that there's not a big sort of structure to the value composition. So what I wanted to do with this was play a little bit with light for you guys to try to push us in this direction. So I have a really definite division in my image between a light side and a dark side. So we're gonna balance that as we paint and mix our colors and deal with the values. And then again, just some other examples of things that I thought you guys might find interesting. There's always a shape language to things, and this comes from character design in film and games. So they're always based on shapes, and I don't know if you guys have seen this before, but circle shapes are always like really soft and peaceful, approachable. Squares are more sturdy and reliable, and then triangles are more like for villains and things that look less welcoming. So I've got some examples here, and then sort of silhouettes. And this is also what I'm talking about with concept art. When you have film or game or anything else, and they're trying to define what their characters are going to look like, they often leave out all of the detail and they go straight for silhouette first, and then they'll slowly flesh out the details and do detailed drawings. So it's the same thing that I use to approach my landscapes. And some more sort of examples where it's just clear cutout, and then just some concept art of value structures where you can see just by using the value, they've created really strong imagery. And then when you put the color on top of that, it just kind of makes everything glow. So here's some examples where really strong silhouette outlined by a light shape. We know exactly what the focal point is. And then some examples of Canadian art, because this is sort of where I'm drawing my inspiration from. So Tom Thompson and Lauren Harris. Obviously, Lauren Harris, his work is sort of all over the place sometimes. And that you'll see that in the progression of artists throughout history. Almost every artist starts with realism, and then they sort of branch off as they start exploring these more abstract ways of looking at things. So we've got, with Lauren Harris, we've got this really fun play of silhouettes in this piece. And then these are really simplified, and we can see the shape language I was talking about with the triangle shape looking a bit menacing. So if you're trying to make something look a bit uninhabitable, you can go with like sharper shape angles. And then with this one, for example, and this one, they're softer and more welcoming, and we can see that in the more rounded shape language. And again, it's really strong silhouette, very simplified shapes. So that's kind of what I was going for. Really quickly, I will send this document to you so you have it. Do you guys have questions so far before we just jump into painting? I just bombarded you with so much info. We're good? Okay. All right, so I'm gonna switch over to my little setup here. Just a second. Okay, here's my face. You're talking to a person. Okay. Yeah, so if we could get that little bit done, and if you have questions, don't hesitate to write to me. Anything, I'm open to suggestions too. If I'm going too fast, too much information, not enough information, not clear enough, please let me know. Is that good? Okay, so just this homework, finish that block. Make sure that you're balancing your values and your warm and cool contrast across it. And then we'll do the sky next week. Good?
I have a quick question.
Yeah, please.
About medium, because my paint doesn't seem to spread very easily. Should I get a medium or something?
I'm not really using medium, so like I'm still seeing through my paint. Is it not spreading because it's not spreading, or is it just transparent-ish?
I don't know. This is my first time painting, so I don't really know what I'm doing.
Oh, this is a very challenging class for you. That's perfect. Okay, so if you're having actual spreadability issues where it's just not moving and it's kind of dry brushing or something, it might just be it's either too much or not enough water, possibly. It could be the quality of paint also. I'm just gonna grab it. Give me 2 seconds, okay? So thanks again for joining. I just wanted to give a quick recap because I was fairly nervous during that first class with you guys. So basically, aside from just putting the paint down and not caring too much about how it's going down, which is sort of important at this phase, you want to, instead of worrying about detail right now, you want to worry about relationships. So I'm looking at, like I mentioned, the overall silhouettes of things that I'm drawing them onto my canvas. So the overall shapes of the trees without worrying about the detail, you just want to create kind of nice clean shapes right now. And we will go back over those as we paint the sky around it. So you don't have to be perfect at this point. You can just kind of lay them in, and if you hate it, you can go back over it, which is why I'm saying don't build texture. So overall shapes, try to keep them clean. Don't worry about being perfect. Don't build texture. For the relationships, I'm always starting my paintings with sort of an area of color in terms of palette and color design. So I'll start with an area and then establish one of my colors and then build out from there, thinking about the relationships between the warm and the cool. So I've got everything that goes from like yellow greens to red greens to orange greens, all the way through to like purple greens. And I do call them that because they actually look like that on my palette. In context with the painting, a very purple green will look green, but on your palette it might actually just look purple. So relationships are funny. So establish a color on your image that you want to start from, and instead of worrying about accuracy for what you're seeing, design around relationships. So in that, the best way to do that with color is warm and cool, which is why I mentioned in the previous videos, the warm-up videos, to have a warm and cool color of each of your primaries, except for the yellow, because we can tweak that super easily. The other thing to worry about while you're putting this down, especially in the initial stages, is the value structure. So there's the relationships between warm and cool, and then there's the value structure of light to dark. So I'm just sort of looking at my image overall and trying to, from that one starting point, which was, aside from the black silhouette on the trees, we then went over and we did that green tree on the left-hand side, and then I branch out from there. So we established the value of that tree and the color, and then from there we established, working out from there, the value and the color, warm or cool, from that position. And then from that starting point, we're going to establish the colors on the water and the values on the water, and then also in the sky. So that's always sort of how I approach it. I attack one area. It's usually a focal point. So when we go, let's say, and do the water, there's that wave that comes up, and that's sort of the focal point of our water area. So my reflex would be to paint that first, and then from there I'm going to branch out using that same logic that we've already established on our palette. So I've got that green, that was the starting point, and then we branched out from there, and then I will do the same for the water and the sky. So in the sky, the focal point is the bright sunlight. And the other thing that you need to remember is things only look bright if they have a contrast in either temperature or value. So that's another spot where we're playing with warm and cool contrast and value contrast. So we're going to have to make sure that we balance the sky to be cool enough and dark enough without being dark to contrast that bright spot. So that's sort of the logic that I think about. So I know it's a lot of info, but it's just the reflexes that I constantly think about for years. Just keep thinking about them. And then as you just lay your paint down, just remember, is this warmer or cooler or lighter or darker than the thing I started with? You can always check your reference, obviously, for information, but sometimes that information isn't there. And if you're trying to design something, instead of just copying a photograph, for example, or your reference, then you can design around your starting point. So that's sort of how I approach designing my way out of a little box. Anyway, so I hope you love that, and I hope that little resume helps break down that massive chunk of content as I did it. So now you've got like the example of me trying to put it and just like a little resume of my thought process. So I'll see you guys next week and enjoy your week. Bye.